So this meeting will be recorded for minutes, so we can provide accurate minutes to everyone in attendance today and not in attendance, as well as any government officials and anybody else in public. All right. Thanks to everybody for being flexible. I'm really sorry we had to make the last minute change to Zoom only. We do want to make our meetings accessible to everybody. But unfortunately, because of an unforeseen circumstance, we weren't able to meet at Hot Java this evening. Just some housekeeping rules. I'll have everybody on mute to start. If you wish to unmute yourself, raise a hand or drop your name in chat and we can unmute you. This first, we'll quickly go through typical neighborhood association business, and then we'll jump into tonight's community discussion. So welcome and thanks for attending. To kick things off, we'll go through the budget really quickly. Our starting budget was $2,600. Expenses included this Zoom meeting here today, and then not Zoom, but the National Night Out event that we hosted in September or August. September. The revenue from dues and fees were $200, and then from our raffle at Neighborhood Night Out was $195, so our ending budget is $1,600. Tonight we are also taking 2022 board nominations. So if you would like to be a member of the board next year, we need nominations by the end of today's meeting. You must be a dues paying member. Membership is pay what you can, and you can pay via check, cash, or on Cash App at the dollar symbol FPSENA on Cash App. At this moment, we will go around and ask if there's anybody interested in being nominated for a board position. We'll go down the line of president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, member at large, starting with president. If there's anybody who wishes to be nominated for president of the board next year, can you please drop your name in the chat or raise your hand so we can account for you. I will nominate myself to be president for the president position. So we have one, but if there are any others, do drop your name in the chat right now. If there's anybody interested in being the vice president of next year and running for that position, can you go ahead and drop your name in the chat or raise your hand? Looks like we have one nomination, Michael Browning. Is there anybody else who would like to nominate themselves for vice president? Moving down the line, secretary. Is there anybody who would like to nominate themselves for secretary? We have Aaron. Anybody else want to nominate themselves for secretary? Next up, we have treasurer. Is there anybody interested in nominating themselves for treasurer? We have Rachel. Anybody else? And then finally, member at large. If there's anybody interested for running member at large, please nominate yourself right now. We have JC. Anybody else? Great. If you would like to nominate yourself, we do need those by the end of the night. you can shoot an email before the meeting ends, or you can drop your name into chat and we'll get you on the list. Great. Moving on to the discussion for tonight. Before you start, if you guys would drop in chat how you heard about this meeting, flyer, email, or Facebook, Nextdoor, or a neighbor, that's really helpful to us and getting notifications out, so we can spread the word of future meetings. Do appreciate any feedback you'd like to offer. Cool. As you do that, we're going to go around and do some quick introductions. I will talk about the board just a little bit, and then we'll go around to each board member tonight and just say a little bit about themselves, their position, and then we will ask for Chris and Vic and Sid and any other LuxLiving representatives to share just a quick word of who they are and their name and whatnot. So a little bit about the Neighborhood Association. We're a neutral forum. Like we are here tonight, we're here to discuss the issues and concerns here in the community. We provide a place where information can be distributed, all of our perspectives discussed, where community concerns are collected and then sent to elected officials and other organizations in the neighborhood. We're really here to serve as that mechanism for fostering and creating a community, and we encourage everyone to play an active role in their neighborhood. A little bit about myself. My name is Dan. I'm the president of the Neighborhood Association. I've been on the board since 2019 in different roles. I was secretary for a minute and became president this year. That's really all I have to say about myself. Michael, if you'd like to introduce yourself real quickly.
Hi, everybody. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Michael. I am currently the treasurer, and I stepped in for Steve Chodes after he had to move out of the neighborhood earlier this year. And this next year, I will be running for vice president. I live on the 4400 block of Oakland, have lived in the neighborhood about 10 years, and just enjoy being part of it and helping make it a better community.
Cool. Thank you, sir. Adam or Brian, if you're on, can you please introduce yourself?
Hey, my name's Adam. I'm the secretary for the Neighborhood Association this year. I'm not going to be running next year, though. I'm happy to talk to anybody who's interested in stepping onto the board. I live over on Gibson, and yeah, happy to answer any questions if they come up.
Cool. Thank you. I don't see Brian on Zoom. I know he was standing at Hot Java, making sure that people who did show up there knew that we were no longer meeting in person. Brian is the vice president of the Neighborhood Association. He's lived in the neighborhood for a couple of years now. And then Xavier, he is the member at large. He's also, I do not see him on tonight's meeting, but he's lived in the neighborhood for a couple of years and he's an active member as well. I'm going to turn it over to, I believe, the Alderwoman of the 17th Ward, Tina Sweet Tea Peel is here. So I'm going to let her introduce herself, and then I will let LuxLiving make their introductions. Sweet Tea, if you would like to make a few words.
Thank you, Dan. Yes, I am the Alderwoman of the 17th Ward. I would like to acknowledge the Forest Park Southeast Neighborhood Association in organizing these meetings for community input. I look forward to the conversation that is going to evolve tonight, and I would just like to give it back to Dan.
Cool, thank you. Chris, Vic, Sid, if you guys would like to make introductions and any other LuxLiving representatives who might be on the call tonight.
Hi, I'm Vic. You can see the rest of the team. I'll just say their name. That's Sid over there. And that's Julie with property management, Yvette in property management, our architect, John, and our traffic engineer, Julie, is right there. And Chris Strizzle.
Mr. Troublemaker. Yes, me.
Okay. All right, there you go.
Cool. Thank you very much. All right. I'm going to put everyone back on mute, and then I will run through the goals and format and objectives for tonight. So our goal tonight is to review the feedback from the first meeting for Lux to provide their responses. There will be no vote or poll tonight on the proposal. Again, we're a neutral forum and we're here to provide that feedback. The format, we'll go category by category and share feedback from meeting number 1. So we had shared feedback to LuxLiving, and it's also in our meeting minutes and our website. And we'll ask that for each piece of response that we received at the meeting, that they provide some clarity in their response to that feedback. We're going to hold questions until the end. So please drop your name in the chat if you'd like to ask a question. We'll have a few members of the association, a few board members, making sure that we get to your questions. We will get to those questions at the end of the feedback. And then we'll have a community discussion after a Q&A. We hope to wrap the meeting by 8:10 or 8 p.m. or 8:10. Outcome. So all the information that is discussed tonight will be passed along to Sweetie. Any remaining questions or concerns that you may have, there is a forum that you can submit those questions or concerns. They will go directly to Alderwoman Peel herself. That link I will copy and paste into the chat. It is a bit.ly link, and you'll need to type in the caps exactly as it's shown in the link to access it. Again, there'll be no poll or vote tonight taken by the association at this meeting. Expectations, like usual, please be respectful of all of our residents and our guests. Everyone will be on mute to start. And again, please drop your name in the chat if you'd like to ask a question. You'll be called on to speak. Any questions before we move on here? All right. So how this will work again is that I will read the responses that we provided that were shared at the first meeting. I will read those off to the LuxLiving team, and I will ask that they provide their responses, their answers to the concerns and questions that everyone had. So this first bullet point here is the traffic study. This issue was very important to many people at the meeting. Neighbors requested a traffic study to understand how the additional traffic from the building will affect the surrounding streets. Chris stated that the traffic study had already been conducted, and it sounds like we have the traffic engineers here tonight. Could you please talk more about the traffic study and explain how traffic from the building will affect the surrounding residential streets?
Can you hear me, Dan?
Yes.
Okay, this is Vic.
Oh.
And I can try to offer a couple comments, and then I'd like to have Julie, who's the traffic engineer, also comment.
Okay.
We looked at a few different options in terms of how to enter the building. the option that we presented in our plans was to enter the building from the alley. We decided that for a couple different reasons, but one was because it's what the zoning there requires, is to enter from the alley. But we also looked at a couple other options. One is to enter directly from Kings Highway, and you could basically come in from the light into the building. And so that would allow you to come in through the intersection at Oakland and Kings Highway. And then we looked at a third option, which was to basically come in through the right, like a right into the Oakland entrance into the neighborhood, which is currently blocked off. So we would move that back, continue to have it blocked off, but move it back enough so that you could enter the garage at our building. But then that would only allow you a right into the structure and then a right out of the structure back onto Kings Highway. So those are the three things we looked at. And Julie can talk a little bit about each of them. Those are kind of the three options we looked at. And for a variety of reasons, we picked the alley. And so with that, there's a couple things. One, the alley served us best because we didn't need to change the zoning or ask for changes in the zoning. Two, it worked the best because it really didn't interfere with anything going on Kings Highway. But second, we did go back and also do a study on Kings Highway, and we worked with BPS and we worked with Streets Department to see what's possible there. And it turns out whether we come in on the alley or whether we come in directly off of Kings Highway, both are totally viable options from a traffic perspective. So because of that, we just picked the alley because it's less variance and less change in the zoning. So that's kind of where it's at. And maybe Julie could give you a better, more detailed explanation of those considerations.
Hi, everyone. I'm Julie Nolfo with Block Miller Group. And as Vic alluded to, we were asked to look at 3 different access.
Oops, sorry about that.
There you go.
Sorry about that.
There we go. So scenario A, which is coming in and out via the existing alley. Essentially what we did with looking at that is we're talking about 150 apartments, and the world I deal in deals with peak hours. So we looked at the AM and the PM peak hour. The proposed development would generate about 51 trips in the morning peak hour and 65 trips in the afternoon peak hour. And obviously, if they come in through the alley, the road that's going to be most impacted is Taylor Avenue. They're going to use either Arco, depending on whether they're going into the site, or Gibson if they're exiting the site, as well as they can use Oakland Avenue for both directions. But they'll all be migrating towards Taylor Avenue, at which point then they will either go south towards Manchester Road, or they can work up north into the BJC campus, or work their way over to the Tower Grove Boyle interchange. That's just to the east. Essentially, there's enough capacity in the neighborhood streets to accept this level of trip generation that would be added to it, but there are a few concerns in the sense that there are some backups on Taylor Avenue, particularly in the PM, and as they go to Manchester Road. And then obviously Manchester Road, particularly westbound in the PM, is considerably congested. So we would be adding some traffic to those critical movements. But if they use the alley, which is scenario A, their traffic would essentially be integrated into the neighborhood and use, again, predominantly Oakland, Arco, Gibson, and then Taylor Avenue to circulate. Scenario B that we looked at assumed that they would not be using the alley, and we would completely segregate development's traffic from the neighborhood. And their sole means of access would be via Kings Highway, and we would add essentially an east leg to the intersection, signalized intersection that would provide access directly into the garage. There would have to be some other improvements done at Kings Highway that all can be accommodated with the existing width and some restriping and repainting out there to provide a southbound left turn lane, as well as to accommodate a through movement into the development. Essentially, we also looked at the progression along Kings Highway, and this could be accommodated without jeopardizing any of the progression of the traffic through there. And overall, the intersection would operate very similarly to the way it did today. It's just that we would add the east lane to it. It also is a viable access alternative. The third means that we were asked to look at, scenario C, consider that we would open up Oakland Avenue just far enough to allow them to get access to the site. And whether it was just for right in, right out, or for all movements, essentially, this scenario was found to be infeasible. There's a reason that it basically was closed off in 2008, 2009. That any introduction of traffic there so close to the signalized intersection with Oakland just proves to be an unsafe situation. You can't incorporate it into the signal operations in its existing location. They tried that for a number of years and it was very problematic. And to leave it unsignalized and so close to the intersection creates other concerns as well. Let alone anybody who would be trying to get to the site, say from the north, they would have to go down Manchester Road and make a U-turn, and there's already congestion there. So essentially, we took all three of these scenarios and we went to BPS City Streets Department and vetted them with them. And they too concluded that that scenario of using Oakland Avenue to provide access was infeasible. But from the City Streets Department, they were comfortable with either option A, the existing alley, or option B, which is to provide access to Kings Highway. So there's really two viable means of providing access to the site. I think that about sums it up from our perspective. Thank you.
Can I ask a question, or are you asking everybody to put the questions in chat?
Yes, if you could please put the questions in chat, that would be great. And then we can get to them after we review this feedback. Does that work?
Sure, if that's what you'd like.
Yes, please. Thank you. Yeah, so I think the next question here, I think bullet point 2 was options for traffic relieving measures. One concern that we heard quite a bit was parking beyond the provided parking spaces will overflow onto neighborhood streets where there's already a shortage of parking due to local parking needs, as well as the surrounding businesses like the WashU BJC Medical Campus. While the form-based code allows a maximum of 1 parking spot per unit, are there any alternatives to parking, like incentivizing tenants to use public transit that you can offer?
Hi, Dan, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, this is Vic again. So yeah, we do have 1-to-1 parking. We do believe that in most of the buildings that we build in the Central West End, that 1-to-1 or slightly above 1-to-1 is kind of what we usually need and use. Every tenant who lives in the building basically gets a unit and a parking spot and some of the amenity fees, and they're all included in one rate. So we give them one rate and they basically get the parking spot with the unit. Some people might not want the parking spot, so legally we can't charge them for that, but majority of folks will get a parking spot with each unit. And if they want a second parking spot, it costs them a lot. And so most people just have one parking spot with each unit. And that usually works well for us. Some of our residents are not going to need parking. They're going to use public transportation. But I would say that's probably like 10, 15%. It's not a big number. So the majority of them will take one parking spot. This particular building has mostly 1 beds and studios, very few 2 beds. And so we just think it's 1-to-1 works. And it's worked well for us in a lot of the buildings that we're doing in the Central West End. So that's kind of our experience. We're open to public transport and supporting that. There'll be some opportunity for that, because there's a bus stop nearby and things like that. And if we can continue that, and we'll be able to support that as well. So, is there any follow-up there? I'm happy to answer more, but that's generally what we do with the parking.
I think the follow-up, based on some of the questions coming in from chat, and I think one of the questions coming in, or one of the concerns that were provided earlier is, one here in the chat is, where will visitors be parking? And then I believe there was a question from the last meeting on public transit regarding the bus stop. And I would have to
Can you
find
still,
it here.
I think we can talk about the bus
Yeah.
stop. Julie has looked at that and she can comment on the bus stop. Most likely the bus stop will be moved. And maybe Julie, could you give them an idea of where it would be moved to that makes most sense?
Yeah.
Sure. We have really two options. If we need to relocate the bus stop on Kings Highway, we could slide it slightly to the north and kind of find that sweet spot just north of the development, but before really it starts to widen out to go on to eastbound 64. Or perhaps we just move it to the south side of the Oakland Signal. And it might even go south of the East Leg, but essentially we could negotiate that with Metro, but we can find a spot within 100 to 150 feet of where it is currently today.
Reading through some of the comments in the chat, it might be best to stay on topic and cover some of these off. We talked about public transit. How do you plan on incentivizing using public transit? Obviously you can suggest it, but are there any incentives for your tenants to use it?
They don't need it.
Let me try that. Like I said, there's some challenges with removing the parking. So what we like to do is every unit comes with a parking spot. The second parking spot will cost a lot more money. So really every unit will come with one parking spot. It's just kind of the model that we have. So you don't get a deep discount to remove parking. When you do that, sometimes people will just park off outside of the garage and cause other problems in the neighborhood. So for us, the model works really well to just include one parking spot with every unit. We do incentivize it in some sense because a lot of folks would need maybe an additional parking spot or something like that, and we do charge a considerable amount for that second parking spot. It could be upwards of a couple $100 a month. And so, we will stick to, every unit gets one spot. The second parking spot is very costly. And so that's the general way that we incentivize just the right number to park in the garage. And then other folks will need to, potentially use public transport or potentially park outside of the garage. And there's some areas around that we would support them with, but generally we find that one-to-one we can get that to work. In most of our other structures and buildings, the garage is pretty full, but there'll usually be 2 or 3 spots available that people can sign up for. So that's kind of generally the number that we are looking at.
Some of the feedback that we got from that first meeting included during construction, residents requested that construction workers park elsewhere and be shuttled to the site due to the lack of parking availability on Arco and Oakland. Can you address those concerns on how you might alleviate that problem?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. We will start construction with demolition of, the buildings. And then we need to basically excavate and shore and do all of our soil improvement. So that just means that we're digging underground. During that phase, you'll have 2 or 3 subcontractors who are basically doing most of the work. And then the garage will go up. The garage is constructed off-site. The garage will come to the site on trucks, and it will be precast sections of garage that will come on site and then will be erected kind of like Legos and building blocks to construct the garage, which goes 2 decks underground, and then a large podium above ground, which is approximately 20 feet, 22 feet above ground. So you've got a lot of concrete and garage that needs to go into place, and that'll be erected using a crane. During that time period, very few contractors will actually be on site. It'll be 2 or 3 subs. They'll actually park their vehicles on our site, and they would basically be doing most of the work at the site at that time. Once the garage comes up, we will have contractors park within the garage. They would access it straight off of Kings Highway, and they would park inside the garage, and they would do all of their work while the trucks and cars are inside of the garage. And that'll continue until we get occupancy. So that's basically the plan. It works really well. And the garage houses all of the cars and all of the construction workers. It also houses a lot of the materials and everything until we are ready to occupy the building.
I'm going to move on to design and aesthetic. We can circle back on questions regarding parking after, but since there's a lot of topics we need to cover, I think we're going to move on really quickly. On construction, can you elaborate on the construction hours?
I'd let Sid elaborate on the construction hours. So Sid runs the construction teams, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but can I? Can you do the construction hours?
Are you guys able to hear me?
Yes.
The traditional hours in the city of St. Louis for construction are 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. It's fairly challenging to start, especially with the trades that are just used to doing construction in St. Louis. Your framing contractors, your roofing contractors, it gets pretty warm most of the time, when those guys are active. And so they're not able to start much later than that to get a productive day. And so we try to stagger the teams between the exterior teams that are working on the exterior and the facade of the building, and the interior teams that are working within the structure. But that's pretty standard hours that we're seeing. The good news is that because we panelize off-site for both the garage and the wood frame structure, the time that we are on the exterior of the building is very minimal. At the last building with the tower crane and the first tower erection wood frame structure, we were 55 days. So we are able to get under roof fairly quickly, which is usually the biggest concern for most neighbors, is getting within the structure.
The next bullet point here is regarding repairing roads. There was additional concern that neighbors had asked if streets and alleys surrounding the development can be repaved after construction is over to repair the damage done by utility work and heavy construction equipment. Do you guys plan on repairing damaged roads?
So yeah, we'd repair anything that's damaged. Just at the end of the job, whatever's damaged, we have a responsibility to do that at any site, but we would do that here as well.
Moving down to design, I believe. Oh, where'd it go? All right, we'll go on to maintenance. This first bullet point here is the properties on Oakland and Arco. Tenants on Arco and Oakland have been unable to reach you regarding property maintenance. They spoke with Judy during the meeting. We're hoping whatever issues, residents were hoping that whatever issues that they were having can be addressed. Are there any updates regarding those tenants or those properties and the upkeep of those buildings?
Yeah. I can say a few words about them. We had bought a variety of units from Drury. You know, some of them are on Kings Highway, and some of them are on Arco, and some of them on Oakland. And some of that was vacant land, and some of it was condemned buildings. And then a couple of them were units that had month-to-month residents in them. And so those month-to-month residents, you know, have been allowed to just stay there and continue their month-to-month tenancy. And some have left, some have moved on. I think there's 4 tenants that we're talking about really at this point that are in the buildings. And so they'll continue to be there. I do have Julie and Yvette here who could comment on the specifics of, you know, what's going on with the tenants. But yeah, they can work with them and they can get issues resolved. So I'll turn it over to Yvette in a second to talk about that. But the one other comment I would make is that, you know, our interest is in really the Kings Highway site. We're really building on the Kings Highway buildings. All of those buildings are condemned. They have severe damage, you know, ever since I was a kid, probably 5 years old, I've driven by those buildings and they've been in horrible shape. And so that's our focus. You know, we want to get rid of those buildings, which are kind of an eyesore into this premier neighborhood in our city. And we want to put something in place there that, you know, everybody can be proud of. The neighborhood behind it, you know, is zoned differently. It needs to be treated differently. And so what we did do is we found a local owner within the Grove already, and they have purchased those buildings from us. So we're not the technical owner of those buildings on Arco and Oakland anymore. And we can share more details with you and contact information of that owner as a next step. But we don't own those buildings on Arco and Oakland. They're owned by a local developer who lives in your neighborhood as a member of your team. You probably know him at some level, but they're the new owner of all of those buildings on the Arco and on the Oakland side. And that covers about 9 parcels, I believe. So I'll stop there. And Yvette, do you want to jump on? You could just use my phone. Sure. And here, yeah.
Hi, I'm Yvette. What I've gathered so far is that there are a total of 5 units that are still occupied at the present moment. However, those 5 units that are occupied, a lot of them are planning on to vacate fairly soon. I have one particular resident that is moving out at the end of October. I have another resident that is planning on moving out November 17th. And there's another resident who is also looking for some place as we speak to try to relocate to. It only leaves me with one person who hasn't really given me a response on what their game plan is. But other than that, 4 of them are already planning on vacating really soon.
Okay. There was additional concern from neighbors about LuxLiving's past issues with property maintenance, and whether there are plans on selling the new building in the imminent future. Are there any specific changes that have been made to improve maintenance at other LuxLiving owned properties?
I mean, we own multiple properties in St. Louis. LuxLiving primarily manages and runs new properties. So no, I don't think there's maintenance issues at these new properties. They're luxury properties that, you know, we're competitive in the luxury market, and we've got really good staff and maintenance folks that manage those. So if there's some specifics, I can address them, but I'll have any of you, you know, you're more than welcome to come tour the new properties. There's a property on Pershing called Chelsea. There's another one called Hudson. Feel free to set up something with us. We'll reach out to you. You can have anybody tour them, and you can see the types of properties we're talking about. These are high-end boutique properties that are, you know, very well managed, and they have great occupancy. I'd say they're both 100% occupied, really, and they've got a waiting list. So we don't think that's really an issue, and we don't think that should be an issue here, but we're constantly striving to improve them. So we're open to feedback there. The other question you asked about is if there's any plans to sell the properties.
Yes. How long do you expect to own the new apartments? There's a track record of selling newly developed properties. I think the neighborhood would like to know what your assurances will be if they'll be upheld by new owners. So if you do sell or you stay, can we be assured of, you know, upkeep and good new owners?
I think so. I mean, first of all, our intent is not to build these in these premier locations. It takes a lot of time and effort. And, you know, I grew up in St. Louis. I don't live here anymore, but I grew up in St. Louis, and I'm very familiar with these neighborhoods. My mom worked at Wash U when I was 5 or 6. So, you know, I'm very familiar with the neighborhoods that you're talking about in the sense that I grew up around them. So yeah, and we're committed to St. Louis. We've been here a long time, and we're going to be here a long time. And we've built a lot of properties here. We own 2,500 units of various forms and different ownership groups, some through Lux and other through other investors and ownership groups. So, you know, if we sell some properties here and there, it's kind of part of business. You know, you buy some and you sell some, but generally speaking, we're buyers of real estate in St. Louis. We continue to be very bullish on the market. So if anybody were to buy the building, they would pay a lot of money for it. So you would think they should take care of it. You know, they would take care of it, and they would be responsible constituents in the neighborhood. But there's no imminent plan to build this and to sell it or anything like that. But at the same time, Dan, I couldn't tell you, like, I couldn't make you a promise that we would never sell it or anything like that. We just want to be transparent. Our goal, though, is to have a critical mass of units, and 150 units is not a lot of units. So it's not like that's our goal. So yeah, we'd like to make this a vibrant part of the community, and we think the type of folks that we would bring into the community would be good participants and want to, you know, contribute to the community, and that's what our hope is. One of the things that we are suggesting also in the front of the building is a bistro cafe, if you will. So that'll be something that'll activate that area, and anybody in the neighborhood can be a part of that. And so we think that, you know, for a variety of reasons, this will add value to an area which is, you know, a strong market, but has just been blighted, you know, for many years.
I think when neighbors talk about the maintenance of the buildings, I think their concerns come from the maintenance and the stories that have come out about Aspirant and Citywide. Can you explain the differences and why they shouldn't should or should not be worried that those problems might also be affecting or within a LuxLiving development?
Well, at the end of the day, the first reason is because we are in a competitive market. And a competitive market means that there's numerous properties that tenants that are paying, rent can go to. They can go to another competing property down the street. And there's numerous of properties that are being built all over the Central West End. And these are people that have means to go to any number of properties. And so we have to be competitive, and we have to make sure that all of those issues are taken care of. But the property that we're talking about here that's being built here is, a market rate property. It's a brand new building, and I don't expect there to be, severe maintenance issues of any sort. But that would be in comparison to some buildings which are like 100 years old and are being renovated, and maybe they would have more issues. So, I just think they're apples and oranges. So there's just different parts of the business. So this particular part of the business is just, it's brand new buildings. They will also have issues. Every product can have maintenance issues, and we have maintenance staff that will address them. But this is a brand new offering, and so it has a rich set of amenities. It's going to have very nice amenitized units as well. And I don't think the concern would be anytime in the near term any maintenance issues there.
Really quickly, going back to you mentioned the bistro. How does having a bistro in the apartment, as well as the other added traffic from deliveries and stuff, affect the traffic study? Is that included in the traffic study, those numbers?
The cafe that we have is really an amenity for the apartment. It's not a commercial lease. We don't have a commercial tenant in the building. This is really the way you would think about, in a hotel, you have a cafe. People who live in the hotel use it. Would it mean that somebody from Arco or Oakland could stop in and walk over, and as they're walking their dog, and get a coffee in the morning? Yeah, they could do that as well. But the primary purpose is really, it's a resident amenity. It's not a third-party lease. We don't charge for a commercial occupancy permit. So it's really just for the people who live in the building. But it is an area where others can take advantage of it, who live in the neighborhood, who can walk to it and leverage the cafe there. So that's the goal. It wouldn't be so that, it's not like a Starbucks with a drive-through. And that's not the goal of the amenity.
Man, there's a lot of questions coming in. I'm gonna jump to design and aesthetic really quick, and I'll circle back to some of these questions that people are having about entry into the bistro and so on. On design, some neighbors asked if the building could fit in with the surrounding neighborhood aesthetic. Chris indicated that a different color paneling might be a possibility, and another resident suggested that what was written into the form-based code states that the purpose of the building development standards is to ensure high quality construction that will be cohesive with the historic context of the neighborhood. He added that notable buildings on Kings Highway include 2 churches and a temple, most having that red brick. So we'd be interested to hear from the architect under the design choice and the ability to make the building fit within the historical character of the surrounding buildings.
The architect is here. This is Vic speaking.
Yes.
The architect is here, and I'd like to have him just share it with you. He also had boards because he was coming to the meeting at Hot Java, and he had those boards to put up on the wall to show you the renderings. So I don't know if you can give him access on your computer to show it.
I
Yeah.
might be able to allow you guys to share your screen, and you can point your camera towards it. That might be the best solution. we
Yeah,
have
just
right
let him share whatever you can, and he might be able to show you how the building would look in red brick versus, you know, the manganese brick that we had before. And I think, okay, yeah, whatever, he's gonna try to share it, okay?
Yep. Is he on a? What is his name?
His name is John. His name is John Odom, but John, are you gonna share it, or is Mike Burkhart gonna share it?
John's gonna off the screen.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, hang on.
Just give him a second, Dan. He's gonna run to his truck and get the board, okay?
Okay. Yeah. Maybe we can jump on to. Maybe we can, as he's doing that, we can talk a little bit more about the bistro, since those are questions that are coming in. Just thinking about specifics regarding the bistro. Somebody had commented, for example, if surrounding residents, non-tenants, are able to use the bistro as, you know, they're walking their dog or strolling by the neighborhood, how can we make sure that they're able to enter the building? Will there be, for example, RFID entry, or a keypad entry?
There'll be a section of the building where you have the bistro, and we'll just leave that during the hours that it's open, the attendant for the bistro, you know, who's operating it, there'll be a couple people there, and they'll just open the door and have it unlocked so that people could come in. And then when they are done, they'll just lock it up and leave. And even if you can enter the bistro, you can't really enter the building, you know, it's just the area that has the bistro.
Just let me know when the architect is back and we can jump back to that question.
Yeah, sure. I'll let you know. Just a couple minutes. I can see him running to his truck.
Okay. Many residents express concern over the height of the building. I know we've kind of gone over this in the first meeting, and there was elaboration there over the form-based code. But I think for people who might not be familiar with the form-based code, or are new to this meeting, can you elaborate on why the building is the height the way it is and not smaller, like 3 or 4 stories?
Well, it's mostly just an economics issue for us in that we're not able to build a 3 or 4 story building that makes sense from an economics perspective. Like we have to have a certain number of units to make our model work, to be able to support staff in the building on an ongoing basis in order to operate the building. And so it's really just a function of that. And we're slightly under 150 units, which is already a strain. Really like to be over that, but you know, it is kind of the situation that we're faced with there. So it's a smaller unit count already, and the neighborhood zoning provides for us to build a building of that size. So it's really more of a use by right that we would like to, you know, comply with the zoning that's in place and build a building that allows for the economics to work. I mean, there could be other types of buildings that you build, but this particular building has 2 decks of garage parking underground. So you need a fair number of units to be able to handle that. And there's a significant contribution immediately. We're not requiring any incentives. So this immediately and impactful, has an impactful benefit to the taxing jurisdictions in the city of St. Louis that are benefiting from the taxes that this building will pay year one. And so, yeah, it should be a sizable amount that we can afford to pay the taxes and afford to make money off the building as well. So those are kind of the considerations that go into effect. John is now here if you want to talk to him about the building as well.
Yeah. So John, first, if you can make these the renderings that you're about to show with the different materials or the different coloring available to us, I would love to have that to share out with the group at some point. But for now, can you walk us through these other alternatives that you have in your hand right now?
Yeah, thank you. So this is a first here. So we typically you would present with a digital PDF for you, but we anticipated on everybody being together tonight, so we only had printed boards here. But so in summary, kind of from the last meeting that you all saw the design aesthetic from the exterior to what has changed at this point. One of the comments, and I think multiple people commented on the brick color, kind of the brick placement on the building, being a little more compatible with the surrounding area in terms of materials. So it may be difficult to see from the board that I'm holding up here, but again, we can share these images with the group as well. From a kind of a design aesthetic, the first floor will be 100% brick down here, and this is more of that red kind of traditional type brick. We've also come in and we said we're going to do some more tower elements here, and you can see these pieces here. So adding some brick to those vertical pieces as well, bringing some more of that texture to the top. These pieces on the side here, the form-based code allows for basically a metal panel only, so there's no horizontal lap siding or anything of that nature on the building. It's all going to be a high quality material. So you've got a mixture of mainly metal on the exterior, and then a brick facade on the top portions that we've added here, and then along the pedestrian side as well here. So from that side, we feel like we've greatly enhanced the materials on the exterior by adding this amount of brick.
Thank you.
So this would be, let me kind of zoom in here. This would be looking the opposite way on Kings Highway. This would be looking south on Kings Highway back at the side of the building. So this would be kind of from the 40 side of it. So again, you can see the brick wrapping the perimeter of the bottom, and then kind of the vertical tower pieces here that we're adding brick elements to as well. And again, around the side. We may have a couple more. There, hang on here. So this would be, there we go.
This is not the right.
No, this is not the right one here. Okay, we're gonna let's try that again.
It's the other one.
The other
This
one
was the
there.
one you just had.
I don't. That's the alternative design. There was one that we had, which was a standard design.
Hang tight here with us.
Sure.
That was the original.
Yeah.
That's the original.
Oh my gosh.
We don't really do much art here. So, maybe get feelings or hair off. Yeah, we don't. I think we might have a few bidders that's comparable enough to you.
Okay, we're back here. We're gonna end up sending you the PDF so everybody can download those and take a look at them.
Okay, what seems to be the problem?
Well, I'm not sure we have the right images here to send you at this point.
Okay. I'm just gonna go through the chat here really quick and make sure I didn't miss any questions regarding design. Oh, I think we might jump to this next slide about the sun and shade study. Let me jump back in and share my screen really quickly. Remove spotlight. So jumping back in, can you elaborate on the sun shade study that you guys provided?
Yeah, so as you know, the building is going to be a 6-story building. So as you see up in the upper hand left-hand corner, that's an 8 a.m. So the sun's obviously rising in the east, and that's on June 21st on the summer solstice there. So, you know, that's not really going to affect many of the neighbors, as it's going to shade more of Kings Highway. And then moving along to the right there, June 21st at 10 a.m. Again, you know, the sun is moving more to the south, so we're not really affecting anything there again. At noon on June 21st, it's going to be pretty well straight down in the sky. It's going to be about 75 degrees in the sky. And then if you look at the, going back down to the left. So at 2 p.m., it's crested around the most southern point there. Again, it's pretty well downward sun at this point. And then 4 p.m., it's going to start to be near west at that point. And again, that's the height of the summer. So it's going to be dang near due west at that point. And then June 21st at 6 p.m. Will be when the most sun happens at that point. But keep in mind, that's the hottest point of the year at June 21st. So, you know, from a shading standpoint, you know, it's not going to be all that bad, really. But if you look at that, we're only coming in about 3 houses at that point to the west.
And Dan, the important thing to note, I'm just standing next to him, is Sid speaking, is that the shade study only affects the properties that were controlled by us previously, and we've obviously indicated that to the new owner as well. So he's well aware of that. So it doesn't really affect any additional neighbors in the neighborhood.
Okay. I'm going back in the chat to look at questions. I think someone else had a question about the sun shade study that I didn't want to miss. I can't find it. Man, this is hard. I'll get back to that question, but I think we're going to jump quickly here to other miscellaneous questions and concerns that were had from the first meeting. Well, here's one on the sunshade. So you provided one for June, but a resident here says the shade will be more pronounced in the winter. Can you talk about that a little bit? How it might be different on December 21st?
Yeah, December 21st. So that's going to be the shortest day of the year. And so that sun will be less high in the sky. So it only raises to about 40 degrees in the sky at that time of year as its height maximum at the southernmost point. So if you look back at the June 21st at 8 a.m. there, when that sun is rising, it'll be a much longer shadow, of course, at that same amount of time, because the shadow, well, excuse me, it won't be as much longer, but it'll be more, the shadow will be more north than it is of the west right there. So that's more due west because it's rising more due east in the summer. So again, that really won't affect anybody at that point because that'll be just casting a shadow over what would be Kings Highway. And then if you go to June 21st at 10 a.m., again, the shadow is just a little bit, the angle is different. It's not necessarily the distance that it's going to be at, it's the casting of the shadow that's going to be different there. Compared to the June 21st at noon, however, the shadow will be longer because it is much lower in the sky at noon during the winter solstice. So then if you go down to the lower left-hand corner.
Oh, yep, sorry.
All right. So at this location, 2 o'clock here, again, it'll be a shadow that's cast more dramatically to the northeast at this point because the sun will be lower in the sky at that time. And then the same pretty well goes for 4 p.m. And then at 6 p.m. it'll be totally dark at that point. So you won't even have a shadow that casts over the neighboring properties. just because the sun sets at about 4:53 on June 21st, or excuse me, December 21st.
Okay. I think that's it for the sunshade questions, but if I'm wrong, please, people in the chat, speak up and we can circle back to it. I'm gonna jump over to some.
One more thing that
Oh, yeah.
the solar sun study is more important to look at during the summer months than it is in the winter months. The winter months are going to be insignificant because of how the sun moves during the winter.
Will the different casting of shadows affect ice melt at all?
You know, that's a kind of a loaded question at that point. You know, if you're talking about Kings Highway, it's going to catch a lot of that sun in the early morning, but there's multiple questions and multiple answers on that. It depends on how many degrees the horizon is at that point, how many trees are in the way. So it's kind of a loaded question that I would hate to kind of speculate upon.
All right. Any other questions for the architect before we move on? If so, do drop them in the chat, but we can always try to circle back to them while we have time. We have about 20 to 25 minutes. We can jump into miscellaneous. I think there's a couple of questions that have popped up here about I think it might have been because of the rendering you showed, but were there more units added to this proposal?
No, 144 units.
Okay, and the design in the proposal or the rendering is the same as what was presented last month, maybe outside of the, okay.
Take the black and turn it to red. That's what John was trying to show. And I think somebody might have said, oh, you know, he didn't step back the building in the back and he made an error. And I told him, take that slide down, and that's what happened. So he didn't show you that slide. So no,
Okay.
No harm, no foul.
Yeah, just wanted a clarification. Thank you. Gonna jump down to miscellaneous here really quickly. This first bullet point here, I know we've talked a little bit about the bus stop, and that and I think it was proposed that it could be moved up north. So can you just elaborate again that if the bus stop is at that location, will it remain open during construction? And if so, can it be improved as part of the construction process?
The bus stop can certainly stay open during construction. I think that would be the intent. If it couldn't stay open in its current location, we would again work with Metro to relocate it somewhere in very close proximity. So it would stay essentially on the east side of Kings Highway, somewhere in close proximity to the crosswalks that are at the signalized intersection.
I think along that lines is the question about, can a curb cut be added? Is that a possibility?
So yes, I mean, that was the scenario B that I looked at, which is essentially that we would add a curb cut onto Kings Highway opposite Oakland Avenue at the signalized intersection. And that concept has been evaluated and discussed with BPS and City Streets Department, and they're amenable to that if that's the direction that you go in. But also, really, there's two viable points of access. You could either use the alley and the neighborhood streets of Arco, Oakland, Gibson, and then onto Taylor, or you could have a curb cut onto Kings Highway. Both are viable.
Well, I don't want to get us off track too much, but there are a lot of questions regarding parking and traffic. There always are. What can you, after this meeting, can you share a more in-depth traffic study for those who have the concerns over parking and traffic?
I'm sure that they can share the
access assessment that was completed, yes.
Thank you. Bullet point 3 here asks about security. Neighbors have asked if the building can provide additional security for the neighborhood, perhaps cameras around the building that link to the Grove camera network. And I believe, if I remember correctly, there were some comments in the chat about additional security, perhaps in the garage or in the facility as well. Can you elaborate on how you plan to increase security in and around your proposal?
Sure. So we do a lot currently with Park Central in many other neighborhoods in the NSI. We've always given Jim White and his team access, Rob Betts and his team access to our cameras. And Rob and Jim can attest that our camera network has aided them in capturing and tracking multiple people that have committed crimes in the past. So it's been very helpful, and we're always, it's always been a good benefit for the neighborhood, and always been a good benefit for Park Central and the NSI in that regard.
Cool. Concerns about Airbnb were raised at that last meeting we had, meeting number 1. Chris had explained that the deed prohibits Airbnb and short-term rentals on the properties. We did acquire the deed to review it, and I think one of the concerns that were had were around the enforcement mechanism. I believe in the deed it says that Drury is the one to enforce the no Airbnb or short-term rental policy. Obviously they're somewhat of a competitor and they would put that in their deed, but does that carry with every owner of the property after that? Again, if you were to sell, and then B, how can we make sure that Drury is can and properly enforce the deed to that extent?
So Drury has the right to enforce part of that agreement. I don't know if there in the deed restriction, there is an enforcement provision. But beyond that, the deed restriction carries with the title of the property. So it would carry to any subsequent owner as well.
I'm sorry, I might have missed it, but what's the enforcement mechanism that I guess would be required?
I can give you a general answer. It's
sure.
We're not Drury, so we don't know how they would enforce it, but they have a legal right to enforce it. It's runs with the land, doesn't run with our ownership of the building, but they don't want to have any competing hotel interests at that location, so they don't want to see any hotel or Airbnb. You know, the deed's public information, so you could look at it, but basically deed restriction says any Airbnb or I think they use some other terms like VRBO, and so there's a variety of things that they don't want, and they're kind of against supporting in that location just for their own competitive reasons. And so, I think they would have a strong business interest in continuing that and ensuring that. And it places your property, there could be some severe issues if you break those covenants. So, I think that nobody would break those. It would be silly for anyone to break those for an Airbnb or something like that, because Drury could, do take various legal actions in order to prevent that.
A follow-up on that would be, how would you or LuxLiving respond if residents started using their units for Airbnbs?
They're not allowed to by the lease. The lease wouldn't allow them to use it as an Airbnb. So, they would be in violation of the lease.
On the question of amenities, you mentioned a bistro. Would there be any other amenities available to the residents of of the neighborhood?
No, nothing in particular comes to mind. All the other amenities are within the building, used by the residents of the building. They're not accessible for anyone else, outside of the building. They're really for the residents of the building. And they are built and sized for the building and for the residents. And they, there's a variety of reasons, insurance and other reasons that we cannot have, just all sorts of people from the neighborhood in and out of the amenities on an ongoing basis. It could create, issues. So they're really, in this particular case, just sized for the residents in the building.
Two other bullet points here, but there's also questions in the chat that I'll hope to get to. More information was requested on possible rent prices. Can you share any rent prices or estimates that you have for these units?
I can't get into the exact rent prices that we would have, but I know that they are going to be market rate for the Central West End, similar to other new construction in the Central West End. We would want to wait until we get further into the construction process when we release the units to kind of know what the market is seeing. But I would say it'd be competitive to other new construction product that you have going on in the Central West End or, nearby to the Central West End.
And to that same degree, would it be possible to include affordable housing in these units at all?
This unit, the way we're structured it right now is that we're not asking for any incentives. We'd like to make it a market rate building. We're doing some projects in other cities that do consider some affordable housing, but they do include a variety of incentives. But I think the Central West End is a unique part of our city where the market has now advanced to the point where, you can build market rate housing and you don't need incentives all the time. And so we would suggest that it's a strong direction to move in, and it sets a precedent for additional development in the neighborhood that could, also be market rate and avoid incentive. And but no, we don't have affordable housing, so to speak, in this building.
Going back to construction, should you break ground, how long do you anticipate construction to last?
When we break ground, from the time we break ground, probably about 18 months. But the building, starts to have a garage within 6 months probably. And so, once the garage goes up, then, then the remainder is about a year.
To the question back on amenities, somebody in the chat had asked how long will the rooftop amenities stay open, and to that degree, how can we make sure that those amenities or those in your units aren't making too much noise, I suppose? How loud will the rooftop be on?
There is no rooftop at this building. There is no rooftop amenity at this building. So some buildings do have rooftop amenities, and this particular building does not have a rooftop amenity.
Is there, sorry, if I'm misremembering, but is there a pool as an amenity here?
Yeah, there's a pool that doesn't sit at the rooftop, but it sits at the second floor or the podium, so maybe 20 feet off the ground. And the majority of that, faces the Arco and Oakland properties that we owned and we sold to a local developer, and they're in support of the development. And they are aware of the issues that could come adjacent to their property behind us. And we went to a variety of developers and we found the one that is open to that and can deal with that. Will there be some noise occasionally? There could be if people are using the pool. Will there be certain hours that are enforced by the property managers? Yes, and there will also be security that will come around and service those buildings. So just like any other building that we have, there's security that operates at certain nighttime hours so that if there is noise, it can be raised and it can be addressed. So yeah, I think that, the majority of cases, it won't be an issue, but occasionally if there is an issue, then there will be some security that can address that in the evenings. And the neighbor just to the rear of us now on Oakland and Arco understands that and is aware of that and purchased the buildings with that in mind and is a good partner for us on the rear of the buildings to be able to deal with those issues.
We have about 5 or 10 minutes left. I think the plan is to answer a few more questions. So if you have any more questions, please drop them in the chat. And then afterwards, we can plan to stay on for 15 or 20 minutes with just the community at hand to hear more specifically from residents on their concerns or thoughts, their questions. But for the time being, for the next 5 or 10 minutes, if there's any more questions, please drop them in the chat. Reading through questions really quick. Are there amenity hours? Sorry if we missed that. Are there amenity hours to your the amenities available?
There are, I don't know what they are, so I'm going to turn it over to Julie. Julie could tell you what the hours are Monday through Friday and maybe on the weekends. So give her a second. She'll just come to the other computer and answer your question. And while she's coming there, you can ask me a different question while you're waiting for her if you want.
Sure. There's a lot coming in. I'll read a statement and I'll hopefully you can provide a response. There are some who prefer direct access to the building from Kings Highway instead of the alley. Traffic already gets backed up along Manchester from Taylor all the way to Kings Highway and along Taylor back a number of blocks. Additionally, there's plenty of pedestrian traffic and children who play in the alleyways. This particular resident, and I'm sure others feel the same way, would hate for the residents living along the alleyway to feel unsafe walking there with increased traffic. So to that point,
Hi, this is Julie. I'm here now answering questions about amenities. Some of the things like the gym are open 24 hours, but anything that would reach the outside, we have hours like Monday through Thursday, it's 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. And the weekends open to it's 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. We shut everything down.
Are you able to hear us, Dan?
Yes.
Sure. And we do have security that goes and shuts those spaces down.
Yep.
Okay. Back to the thank you, Julie. Back to the question about traffic. I believe some people in the chat have stated that they prefer the ingress egress off of Kings Highway. And for safety reasons, not having traffic come along the alleyway.
I can answer that a little bit. Like I said, we early on hired a traffic consultant, and you spoke to Julie on this call, so you know her. We hired early on because we just felt that, one way or the other, there would be an opportunity to come in through Kings Highway or through the alley, or potentially, through that third option that we mentioned. So we kind of looked at all of the options, and we wanted to evaluate, what are the pros and cons of these options. But as it turns out, for a variety of reasons, the alley was favored. Let me kind of articulate why, and we can also share with you like what is possible moving forward. So why is, if you think about Kings Highway access versus the alley has more favorable options. One, it's within the zoning parameters. We don't have to ask for any variances. Two, it provides easy, secure access. When we get on Kings Highway, we potentially have some issues. For example, when folks are leaving the garage in the morning and there's a light there, you could have a backup in our garage. It could create issues where you're not able to get out as quickly as you want in the morning. And so traffic backs up into our garage. It also would require us to further reduce the footprint of the building in order to accommodate the traffic from the garage out into Kings Highway. So for a variety of reasons, mostly tied to traffic, not on the street, but into our garage, and how easy it is for people to leave the building. Let's say there's any issue within the garage and people need to get out. So for all those reasons, we felt that the alley was the safest bet. And because the traffic modeling showed that you could support it easily on either Kings Highway or on the back of the building on the alley, we favored that approach, and it required no variances. If you went to the Kings Highway side, there would need to be a series of variances that we would need to ask for, not only for traffic getting into the building, but for our building and how the setbacks would work on the building. So we just didn't go down that path because it would create a whole host of variances that are needed, and just didn't think that made sense. And so we're really looking at a building here that we're proposing that just doesn't require any variances, and it sticks to the code that is suggested. So that's kind of why we ended up there. And that's something that we can look at, but just we need to be aware that there's a series of variances that'll come with that change setbacks on the rear of the property, and then also have implications on traffic within the garage and how the garage traffic exits, like during peak hours, like in the morning or in the evening, onto the street, onto Kings Highway.
Did the traffic study take into consideration the added number of units that Green Street is building south of Manchester and the traffic that will have on Manchester and Taylor?
Julie can comment, but I don't think she's looking at a variety of new development. I think she's looking at the traffic pattern that exists there today.
The traffic assessment does not take into consideration potential developments happening south of Manchester Avenue. No, it essentially looked at and compared the 3 axis scenarios and the ramifications associated with that.
Just going back to the chat really quick. I know there's still a lot of questions to be answered and a lot of concerns that people have. It is 8 o'clock. I will be respectful of your time, Vic, Sid, and the rest of the group. If you would like to stay and continue to answer questions, we can continue for 10 or 15 more minutes. Otherwise, we will kind of step aside and have a community-based meeting with just the residents and have more of a discussion-based conversation. Do you guys have a preference? If you guys would like to stay on for 10 or 15 more minutes?
I can stay for 10 minutes. No problem.
Okay. looking back through some of these comments, Julie, can the traffic study incorporate the additional traffic generated by new developments? Is that a possibility to incorporate that?
I mean, anything is possible, yes. Essentially, at that point, though, I mean, we would have to go find out if a traffic impact study was done for those developments that we can then use. Otherwise, we then would have to create a traffic impact study for those. A good rule of thumb is that generally traffic impact studies are not required for anything that doesn't generate 100 trips in a peak hour. And again, this development would generate 51 in the morning and 65 in the afternoon. And I offer this up as sort of a rule of thumb for you all, in the sense that I serve as the city traffic engineer for a number of municipalities. So if a development doesn't generate 100 trips in a peak hour, we typically do not require a traffic impact study for it. So what was done here, again, was an access assessment that looked at various ways of accessing the site and listing out the advantages, disadvantages, and then based off of that, offered a conclusion as to whether or not it was viable. But again, anything can be studied, yes, but the place to start was, did those developments have to do traffic impact studies for them? And if so, could we use that to fold into this?
For those who aren't traffic engineering experts like myself, can you elaborate on how you estimate there only be 50 trips when there are 144 so odd units?
Yeah, gladly. So we use a national standard that's published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers that basically uses data and for various land uses. So with respect to this land use, we can go in there and I apologize, I don't have it in front of me, but usually for residential, they'll base it off of numerous studies. In other words, 30, 40, 50 other properties nationwide. And then they equate that back to a number of trips that are generated per unit. So we just simply take the number of units, we go to the national standard for an apartment based on, and there's different categories, mid-rise, low-rise, high-rise, and essentially we apply the appropriate one depending on how many floors are proposed. And based off of that, it tells you how many it generates in that 1 hour that we're looking at. So we look at the morning hour and then the afternoon and the PM hour, because for residential type uses, those are the two most critical time periods. That doesn't say that's all the traffic it generates. It just says that's what's generating in those peak hours that we're looking at. So it's all based off of national standards.
I think two more questions, ending questions, maybe three. Really quickly, is there any bike parking at this apartment complex?
Bike parking.
Yeah, there'll be bike parking in the garage.
Can you share how many bike parking spots will be available?
You usually do for a building of this size, anywhere between like 30 to 50 bike parking spots.
Cool. Two more questions here really quickly. What are I don't know how to phrase this question. Let me get back to that one. Where to go? One second. Where'd it go? I guess more broadly speaking, I think we as a community have a lot of questions and concerns still. And again, we'll try to discuss here on this same Zoom call in a couple of minutes. But a question for you, Vic and Sid and all, like what do you anticipate your next steps to be? Where do we kind of go from here?
Then can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
I think I heard your question. You said you wanted to know what I thought were the next steps. Really,
Yeah, I guess
the question is more, the ball is in your court to tell me what feedback you have, coming out of the meeting, and tell us what are the key issues that the neighborhood thinks are important to talk further about, and give us some feedback on that. So yeah, we're I'm sorry, somebody else is saying something here. Yeah. Yeah, give us your feedback on that. I think we're here to, make sure that we understand the issues and we can address them. We can't necessarily, there's always some issues with construction. We realize that because we do it in a lot of locations, and we appreciate the feedback. So, we're going to want to work with you to address some of the operational issues of, when it starts and where people park. And we'll have a project manager that can attend your neighborhood meetings on a monthly basis and get feedback, and you can talk to them and address them, so we can address issues on an ongoing basis. So all of that is something that we're signing up for. We understand that the traffic and parking details, we'll share the study. You can look at the details around that. And I think that I'm also open to working with the neighborhood on that. There could be an option where we look at Kings Highway more seriously. So, I think the question is the format and the forum, which we do that. We need to do that with folks from a zoning perspective. So some of the issues that we will deal with as a next step, if we were to look at that, really have to do with zoning. So if the neighborhood makes a recommendation to the zoning folks that are looking at this, that, that's a direction to seriously consider, then, I think we would look at that, and, we would evaluate that. But we, that's kind of the next step. We need to get into the zoning discussions, and how do we get the building zoned, and get to that point. So that would be our next step. And we would try to take the recommendations that you give into that, and you should provide that to them. So that would be my suggestion.
Okay. I'm going to let Alderwoman Peel have the mic for a second. She would like to share some of her thoughts on next steps. I think definitely as an association, again, our goal is to provide that feedback to all the parties necessary, and we'll do that. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to Sweet Tea really quickly for her to speak.
Great. Thanks, Dan, and thank you everybody on this meeting and giving all this community feedback. It's been a lot of information to take in from this meeting and the last meeting. The next steps would be, I will take in that information in terms of what you have provided us, and I'll get back with the developers regarding that, and we will take it from there. Because the neighborhood association, we're not going to be taking any votes at this point in time. It's correlating all of this information, and would love to have more people go to the link that Dan provided and provide more concerns, issues, pros and cons regarding this development.
Thank you. Dropping the link in the chat again. So I think what we'll do at this time is we'll break off into a separate community-based discussion. I do want to thank everyone's time here. Vic, Sid, Julie, John, Chris, and everyone else who from LuxLiving who came to talk and to elaborate on questions and to elaborate on concerns. We will funnel our feedback from tonight to Alderwoman Peel, and she will provide that feedback to you all, and how whatever comes of next meetings is up to the discretion of Alderwoman Sweetie. She'll definitely have messaging around that. But at this time, if you'd like to stick around for maybe 15 minutes and kind of talk, I know there's a lot of thoughts going around, and this would be a lot easier if we were in person, but we are not. So we're gonna try it out and see what happens. So Vic and Sid, I do appreciate all of your time tonight, but we'll have Alderwoman Sweetie get back to you shortly. I appreciate your time tonight.
Okay, thank you, Gus.
I'll give them a minute to step out, and then we can jump into a community-based discussion. I'm not sure how many people are left here. I'm not very good at looking at the Zoom, but 53. Cool. Thanks, guys. Not sure how this is gonna work, but if you guys want to raise your hand and talk a little bit, we'll try to go person by person and try to get thoughts. I'll try to keep it to like about a minute per person, just so everyone has enough time. So if you're in the chat, which I've lost on my screen, just feel free to, man, I can't find it now. My brain is mush. We'll get started. Give me 1 minute really quick. There it is. If you'd like to share some thoughts, go ahead and raise your hand in the chat, and I can unmute you and we can start talking. Or in the chat if you want to chat there. Anybody? Oh, Catherine, I see your hands raised. Sorry about that. I've asked to unmute you. There you go. Go for it.
Yeah, I just, you know, a lot of us expressed real concerns about the impact that this building would have on the neighborhood and on the community. I get the feeling that they are just brushing that off. I mean, I guess maybe I don't understand what it's like to be in their position developing a property, but you know, they keep saying, oh, we're doing this wonderful thing for this, you know, these horrible buildings that were blighted. Well, yeah, that wasn't good. But you know, that alone did not make the neighborhood unlivable. But there are real questions about what that property would do to this neighborhood, I think. And I don't feel that they're giving them any concern. That's my question.
Anybody else want to share their questions or concerns? I see Julie Birkenmeyer. I will ask to meet you. Go ahead.
Thanks, Dan. By the way, you just did a fabulous job.
Thanks. My brain is blah, but I appreciate it.
One question that I don't have answered, I don't think, is whether they actually need any of our, let me back up. They can do whatever they want without anything from us, is my thought. Like, they don't need us to approve it. They don't need us to do anything. They can pretty much build a building tomorrow if they want to. Is that incorrect? Do they need, or do we have any leverage over them doing what they want?
They are not seeking.
My understanding.
Correct. They are not seeking any incentives. they're abiding by the form-based code, so they don't have to go through any process that I'm aware of. But there is I think Richard pointed out here in the chat that there's a preservation review of demo. That's the only thing really stopping them at the moment. Meg, who is the CRO, she has listened to the previous meeting, and I don't know if she was on tonight. She was planning to be in person. She will have a recording of this meeting, and I am very certain that she'll listen to it. We can absolutely pass that along to her right after this meeting. I think a lot of the discussion that we have now is important to provide that feedback. As people in the chat are mentioning, the demo permit was applied for, I believe, in early September, and I believe there's 45 days on it or so. So it's coming up here in like late October at the probably at the latest. But I hope that answers your question.
May I ask a super quick follow-up question for the people who know, which is there a public process or public input into that demo permit process, or is that strictly at the administrative level?
To my knowledge, yeah, go for it, Sweetie. Sorry.
I could look into that, Julie, and ask the Cultural Resources and Planning Department regarding that question. Regarding your other question, about community input, in order to be good neighbors, your voices need to be vocal on what your needs are, whether this development is in this neighborhood. So it is always, the community input can be brought to the attention of the developers, and taking all of this information, it is a lot, and synthesizing that.
There's a question here from Tracy along the lines of parking. If we take steps to make our blocks residential parking only, how might that help our parking concerns, or would those new tenants be given parking stickers as well? I believe they'd be able to purchase those parking stickers. No, I think they have to be on Arco or Oakland, since they're tenants on Kings Highway. I don't think they'd be able to purchase one. It's kind of a Park Central question, I believe. But outside of that, there's, as Sarah points out, there's really no enforcement for residential parking. Megan, I see you have your hand raised. I will unmute you. Go for it.
Hi, yeah, my name's Lucas Gard. I live on Gibson with Megan. And there are a couple of specific concerns I had. I apologize if this is redundant. One is that they have fewer parking space than beds. And I'm concerned about the guest parking. I don't know where that's going to happen. And I think I do know where it's going to happen. It's probably going to be on my block, and it's hard enough to park already. So I do have that concern. Another thing is two-way traffic in those alleys works fine the way it is, but there are dumpsters in those alleys. So if we increase the amount of traffic, I don't think two-way traffic is going to work. And I didn't hear a solution to that, but maybe I just missed it. That's all I have.
I think they talked last time about creating another alley. Does anybody remember something like that? Or am I just imagining it?
Can you repeat that?
I thought they talked last meeting, about making another alley.
I believe their original proposal called for changing the alley a little bit, but not adding an alley.
Okay. Because I mean, I agree, dumpsters wouldn't fit if they're going to have a lot of traffic in that alley. So anyway, we can ask that.
Any other questions, concerns, thoughts, comments? That Stephen, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, so I'm on Steve Beggany on the 4400 block of Oakland. Just an observation that given that there aren't necessarily variances being requested, I guess they would if the Kings Highway entrance is needed, but that we don't currently have a lot of leverage here because it seems to largely meet the form-based code or completely meet it. It seems like the most direct impact on residents is the Kings Highway access issue. And if, my suggestion to the neighbors would be to kind of limit our feedback toward that main issue because it affects all the residents within a few surrounding blocks, that we don't have all those cars competing with hospital traffic and trying to get out of our alleys when there's traffic blocking everything. So like that might be the one main issue we should really throw our weight behind, is trying to get that garage access onto Kings Highway rather than the alley. But that's just my suggestion.
Tom, I see you have your hand raised. If you want to go. Let's see if I can find you. Tom, you there, bud?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, instead of using this generalized traffic study, why doesn't Lux go look at a building they already own in the Central West End and count those cars and get a actual for real in the Central West End neighborhood traffic number instead of this 51 and 60 something number that they're generating off of somebody else's data? It would seem that actual data on their property of a similar size and location would be more prudent for this endeavor.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty reasonable ask. Definitely one to make. Michael, I see you have your hand raised as well.
Yes, thank you. I'm very concerned about the quality of their buildings. They have a track record of cutting corners even in their new buildings. A lot of their buildings are still under construction. We don't even know what they're going to look like at the end, but the ones they have built have lots of issues that are well recorded online. You can do a general search, but there's like a post on Reddit every week about the problems their buildings have. I'm worried that if they build, we're going to end up with something that in a few years is going to be a real detriment to this neighborhood. And I'm not sure what provisions there are to make sure they build something nicer. But I think that we ought to be very aware that what we're going to get with this building, even though it's new, won't be that nice.
Yeah, I know we tried asking for some elaboration on the differences between some of the property that they own under aspirant or citywide, and we didn't get that clear of an answer, I don't think.
Well, they don't want to answer it. They already sold the Tribeca. That wasn't even a year old when they sold it. And that was supposed to be one of their big landmark properties, and it's already been unloaded.
Mr. Mark Burnett, go for it.
Yeah, my concern is we're dealing with a bad actor. There are concerns, or we've heard that they've been banned from buying at Home Depot because of bad practices. We know what's happening with the lawsuits publicly. I have major concerns that they can present and talk very nicely to us as a group, but I have a lack of trust.
Yeah, to that point, Pat points out here that they didn't deal with the current residents in the occupied units either. They mentioned that they are in the process of selling them to someone in the Grove, but for the longest time didn't take care of the tenants that were in that building. Not to mention all of the concerns that have been brought up regarding the tenants or the buildings and their previous properties, and that they've sold 2 of their buildings so far, Tribeca and Steelyard. Just putting that in there as people drop that in the chat.
I would like to add a couple comments, and then there was a question in the chat I think is pretty relevant to this last discussion. And so the comments I want to make are in terms of LuxLiving. When I was actually running for election, there were 5 individuals who approached me regarding the conditions in their apartment complex, and that there was an elevator that was broken. They wanted me to do something about that. I told them, gave them some resources regarding that, and I told them I'm not an elected official at that point in time. So I just want to bring that up in terms of people have come to me regarding, as I said before I was even elected, regarding conditions in older properties. And I remember at the previous meeting, and I think even at this meeting, you know, they haven't said anything about touring their older properties. And so I think that that should be an opportunity for people to see the older properties. And that in the meeting before, and I think even in this meeting, they were saying that, you know, these newer properties they'll take care of, but they're going to get to be old properties. Right. And so I'm just wondering, you know, if they're not taking care of their older properties at this point in time, what's going to happen when these become older properties? I'm just citing that from your conversations and what you think. And I think that Aaron Birch had a question, and he said, what is the
sky in the pie? Pie in the sky? Was that the question? If you could have anything on this site, what would it be?
What is the best use for these properties? Pie in the sky, what would you dream be? And so I think that's something.
Sorry, Tina.
And I just want to note there's been other people who have come up to me regarding their properties. What is the best use of these properties? Pie in the sky, what would your dream be?
Is that a question you're proposing now? Is it just, I know that
Oh, Aaron asked that question, so
yeah.
I just was putting it out to everybody, and I thought it was a good question. You know, what do you think is the best use, I guess, and ideas?
Ryan says that he thinks that he would want an even denser development. I know Cami has mentioned affordable housing, and so have others. Mary says a 3-story condo. There's in KC, Lux is almost proposing another development along the Berkeley riverfront, in which in February, I believe, Kansas City passed an ordinance requiring any new apartment project going in over, I think, a certain number of units was required by, I'll say, like June, to have X number of affordable housing and X number of extreme affordable housing. Obviously, St. Louis doesn't have that in here right now, But the questions and concerns around particularly affordable housing, I think that's definitely a larger concern or thing that St. Louis has to take up, because currently, and obviously there's nothing holding Lux to doing affordable housing, but if, again, going back to that Kansas City ordinance, if they required incentives, it required that they have affordable housing. So to the affordable housing situation question, I think that's one possible solution in the future. But then again, to Ryan's point, maybe it's even a denser unit where perhaps there's, I'm not playing developer, I shouldn't do that. Catherine says green space. Some people don't have too much issue with the proposal, but they have more issue with the track record of the developer. And Tracy here says that she prefers this residential property to Drury's plan, but the traffic impact is concerning, and that traffic impact, I think, is a concern of a lot of people. A lot of people within that section of the neighborhood see day to day the traffic on Taylor and the buildup of traffic because of added new units or the future of added new units. You have more people going in and commuting to BJC and WashU. And to Tom's point, and I think the points made by other people, was that this was a national study. And, if you look at a study from average from New York or Chicago or LA, where public transit is more accessible and more traditional and more common, and then you try to apply it here on the number of units that require parking and number of people driving at peak hours, you might have a difference in that number. So a more neighborhood specific study, I think, is appropriate. I'm going to stop talking and let other people talk. It's not my meeting, it's yours. Anybody else want to share some thoughts or concerns? Sunlight study. Yes, I can pop that back up. So this is the sunlight study. Let me know if pushing the building out of the way would help to look in traffic. So that's the sunlight study. I believe, I don't know if it's on the website. I know, Catherine, you had mentioned what was the original proposal in terms of the alleyway, and I believe that was shared in the chat. So I'll bring that up really quickly. This was their original proposal in terms of the alleyway. So they were gonna relocate it to accommodate the step down units, or the two-story kind of units that kind of acted like a transition into the neighborhood.
But that's not the footprint anymore, is it?
No, it is not. Just so we're all clear, the proposal that they shared with us in the last meeting is this one.
Okay. Yeah.
That's the site plan. Bistro in front. I believe there's a lot of the concern that was brought up was the bus stop. I don't know exactly where it's at, but it's somewhere along the frontage here. And obviously, if there's construction, it's how can somebody getting off the bus, get off the bus and walk somewhere if there's construction? How do they get to it? Is that safe? Can it be moved? Can it be more pleasing to accommodate those taking public transit? And obviously there are other concerns, like if right here at B is the garage, you increase, the ingress and egress of pedestrian traffic, and makes it a little bit unsafe. And there's a lot of things a lot of quirks about this proposal that are all rightfully so with concerns.
It's basically, it's a lot of people and cars in a pretty small space.
Yeah. Tom said, okay, yeah. Form-based code. Oh man.
That's a good question.
What does transit-oriented development mean for Lux? That's a great question to ask. Really great question to ask. Tim has entered the room. Will he record? Trying to think. Moving the bus stop. I know when we were talking about design and aesthetics, Tom, in an email you had shared the form-based code and making it blend and helping it blend in with the surrounding neighborhood. When we were discussing that with Lux, some people in the chat had mentioned that it doesn't, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, the architecture and design doesn't have to exactly blend with the neighborhood. It's more of a modern take on the surroundings, and that the design doesn't necessarily have to take that brick look, but it can take brick inspiration. I guess a question here for everyone is, what are your desires with the design and architecture, knowing that's probably one of the easy changes that they can make if this project were to move forward? Any opinions on that? Form-based code calls for yeah, I can show that. Richard asked for the form-based code. I have that downloaded. Form-based code. It's a deed. It's not a form-based code. Oh, someone has a question. Go for it. Entry.
This is Andre. I live on the 4400 block of Gibson. I don't really have a question. Like, one thing that kind of caught my eye after the first meeting was they mentioned potentially selling the units at $325,000 per unit, which would put like the entire development around $50 million, which the part that I'm struggling with is how it's not profitable to build something, say, 30 or 40 units, because that would still put you at $10 million. And I feel like this current proposal, where it's like basically what everyone builds in Central West End, which is like 6 floors of wood, is just like basically a profit maximizing approach where you don't have to really spend much money to build any higher, and it's just jamming as many units as possible in as small of a space as possible. So yeah, I guess I just don't really buy the whole, this is the only way for it to make financial sense. I think this is just their best way to make the most money.
Yeah, and then sell it off for more money.
Yep.
Anybody else have thoughts on that or the design? I'm trying to pull up the form-based code. I have so many more documents on my desktop than I thought. Here we go. Nope.
One thing Andre brought up was, and I just have a question regarding fire trucks coming in and out. You know, this is a wood-based building. We have seen, I think it was on Linville, there was a new building that was wood-based and it went up in flames. So I'm just wondering safety regarding that, as Andre, I think, mentioned regarding wood-based. So ambulances, fire trucks.
I mean, if they didn't have to get a variance for that, it must meet the requirements, I'm guessing. But it's a good question.
All right, form-based code. Here we go. All right, let's get to work. Form-based code. I believe this is a podium. Have it one sec. All right, share the screen. So this is a section of the form-based code. These are building envelope standards based on the location in the neighborhood. Where Lux is proposing is over here on Arco and Oakland. In their proposal packet, they had suggested this is a podium building, which is allowable. And if we skip to the podium buildings in section 4, I didn't write this, so bear with me.
It's a great document.
Yes.
Lots of good stuff.
It's a masterpiece. Not really. There's it's good. Yeah, sorry, brain fart. Podium buildings. So when we talk about the allowable materials in the on a podium building, Percy, I see your hands raised. 1 second. There's a brick, concrete panels, glass, metals, precast, and stone block. And then it says to refer to section 4.3 about the further standards when we talk about the material types in relation to the surrounding areas. Sorry, I don't want to bore you guys with this. Right. My computer's slowing down. It's having a hissy fit. There we go. 4.3 is at the top. Oh, I can't find it. Percy, as you can, as I look for this, you can share your thoughts.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks for the opportunity to chime in.
Yeah.
Listen to a lot of the questions and comments about the building over here.
Mm-hmm.
Just wanted to say that I think those are good concerns, but I think the big thing is the traffic, of course, and the upkeep and maintenance of said building that's going to be built. I'd like to say that our weapon here, if this project should go through, is our alderperson. If these people come in with a shaky Jake type of demeanor, or when they build this building, they don't uphold their promise. All the person, Sweet Tea, is the person that can address it and get it under control, because that's what we elect all the persons for. So we have a mechanism, if you will, to, in some shape, form, or fashion, keep these people in check if they do not uphold what they said they were going to do. That's something that we should think about and remember in the event of some type of shenanigans or something that happens that we are not happy with LuxLiving or whoever the new person may be if they sell it. Thank you.
Any other questions or thoughts? Why doing a lousy job finding this?
I think Percy, what you said was a good statement. And, you know, as a community, you would have to come to me to, I mean, I can't track everything that's happening, but if you see things, you would come to myself and or some departments in the city, but I would like to be made aware of, you know, where you think things might not be going well in terms of construction and staging and different issues. And I think these things need to be outlined in detail before the construction even starts with whomever.
Hello, my name's Mark. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just listening to everyone's comments and I agree with everything that's been saying. Like, once the decision to build it is underway, monitoring construction and you know, whether the trash is being removed or what have you after the fact. But it seemed like a lot of the comments or a lot of the concerns were things that were in front of all of that. The design of the space, does it reflect the neighborhood, the number of units, and is that really the best path forward? All of these questions and things would need to be dealt with beforehand. My question is, at that portion or that phase or this phase that we're in now of this development, what leverage, if any at all, does the community have on the design element today, on the number of units or how they're being facilitated today outside of form-based plan, which if they have the construction pieces right, according to that, we really can only say, well, before we weren't happy with what they did over there, they would say, well, we're just not going to do that here. And you'd have to say, okay, or is there something more that can be asked in phase one, not after? I mean, after it's built, if there's a problem or if it's under construction, there's a problem, we can go to the alderman and there's things to point at. But until then, they're not asking for anything. So what leverage do we have is the real question. Just, do we have it? Yes, no.
At the end of the meeting, it sounded like Vic wanted to hear from us requests on how to change the proposal. Obviously, there are limitations and things as a business that he runs, limitations to what he can and can't do. I think that willingness, at least in the upfront, is nice. I don't think
it's socially responsible, but it doesn't mean that said business person is going to do any of that. They don't, because there's nothing to say you have to build at this quality level and here are those exact standards on the size of nails. There's nothing there that holds them to anything other than we've listened to the community. We made some general fabrication changes to mimic that or to follow through on that. And then at some point they're going to say, okay, we're going to go. So is there anything at that point that we can say, or we're just community and we don't like that building?
In the past, under Park Central development, any developer who goes through them is required to sign I believe the name of it is called the Good Neighbor Agreement or the Good Community Agreement or something to that effect. I've never seen what that document holds or how that's enforced or what it says. Obviously, that would be something to look at and consider. I think the bigger issue is probably along the lines of like a tenants' rights bill. There's also things that the city probably has to, the group as all their people have to come to agreement on and approve to really put safeguards in place to make sure there's no bait and switch or they follow what they said. Developers have to follow what they've said they would do.
Yeah, I think having that both community and kind of municipal oversight on any type of development like this is really great and beneficial because, well, of all of us that live here, we only understand so much of what it takes to build anything, oversee anything. You know, we have our daily lives. So it seems like, you know, a Park Central group that has that would be reviewing that and maybe even requesting like, you know, whole frontage samples of the materials that they're planning to use. At least it'd be a much more informed group that could inform all of us.
Well, I'll just make a comment regarding Mark's phase one question. As I said earlier, I think that everything that is going to be put into a plan for a development needs to be detailed and have an agreement between the community and also with the city to make sure that they're compliant, and there will be city staff that can assist in terms of making some of those things compliant in terms of permitting, etc. And then again, as I mentioned, if you saw something that was not in compliance, that's something you need to bring up to myself. But at the same time, Mark, you know, you were talking about, you know, before the development was going to be developed. And I think that the community, you know, in terms of the aesthetics, etc., you know, a lot of people are talking about really wanting an entrance on Kings Highway to mitigate parking. You know, those are things regarding whoever is collaborating in a community. Those are good neighborhood agreements. And so, you know, I would push those things that, you know, are really vital and important for the community so that things can, I mean, you know, we're going to have change, but to mitigate some of, you know, the biggest issues, which is parking and traffic in all of Forest Park Southeast. And so I would be advocating for the needs of the community there.
Yeah, we just need to keep bringing stuff up. That's all we can do, really.
Richard, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I was trying to stay quiet because I don't live in the neighborhood, but I thought you might all want to hear our experience over here. I live in Stinker de Bolivar, and of course they built 3 buildings across de Bolivar and de Bolivar Place, Tribeca, which they sold, Chelsea, and now and latest Hudson, which is about wrapped up. Their construction site, I think any construction site to be a mess, but theirs were especially messy. So if this does move forward, stay on top of them. And typically they haven't had much to demo for their new buildings, but in this case, there's what, 7. There's probably lead paint in them. You guys have got stay on top of them that they're doing that demo correctly, lest you get a big lead dust cloud getting all over the neighborhood. At some point, they had blocked the was it St. Vincent Greenway there on the Bolivar, so they extended pretty far into the public right of way. Of course, it's a wide sidewalk, a wide bike lane, and then the trolley tracks. But and someone raised this stink, and we got a proper covered walkway there for a while. So, but you guys, if it just does move forward, stay on top of them. But yeah, I've been wondering if they had a proposal within our neighborhood, would I be supportive? I from what I've seen, I just don't think so. Track record. I mean, Chelsea and Hudson look pretty nice. I've been in Chelsea. It's very nice inside. How is it going to age? I'm not sure. I couldn't care less about parking and traffic, but that's just me. We live in a city. This is how we build places where you don't have to drive, is by putting lots of units on less land. But with this developer in particular, I mean, come over to Bolivar. It was much messier, but you see what they built. But what's really got my craw right now is their lawsuit against Expo across the street has stalled the project, which just means further delays in the sidewalks being closed and the Bolivar being constrained. And it's negatively impacting our quality of life over here. So anyways, come over if you want to take a look at what they're up to.
Thanks, Richard. Percy,
That's a little discouraging.
Yeah. Percy, do you still have a question or?
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me.
No worries.
All right.
I got that. Oh, my bad. Abatement, handling demo. Abatement. JC, are you able to expand on that question about abatement?
More in regards to asbestos, if any of the old ducting and stuff, are they wetting down this demolition site as they're demoing it to where dust and debris is not carried throughout the neighborhood?
Yeah, that's a great question.
There are guidelines regarding dust and debris. I was told, I don't know where they are in terms of wetting down the construction area to minimize the dust and dirt. I know that they're doing I know it's a bigger project. They're doing a great job at the soccer stadium, keeping the dust and dirt in that area pretty clean.
Awesome. Thanks, VT.
Well, Dan, maybe we should let you go so you can relax from this ordeal.
Well, I know it's important for people's voices to be heard, and I feel awful that we had to turn people away from the door at Hot Java. Not in our control. We try to make it as accessible as possible. I do have to walk my dog at some point, and I would like to go to bed, but if I will stay on for as long as there are questions and concerns and comments, so they can be recorded and passed along to obviously Sweet Tea, but everybody else who wasn't able to attend or needs to read these minutes.
Well, I think it's impressive that 70 people at one point were all logged on listening to this. That shows that people are definitely concerned or interested.
Yeah, 7 times more than people usually show up. But no, it's a project that impacts a lot of people, so it's not surprising. Feedback.
And I'd also like just to make a testament to the neighborhood association, the officers, and the hard work, and some of the volunteers in terms of publicizing this, notifying residents, something which was really something I was discussing with them, making sure that you all knew and it got out. And so this is a miraculous number of people, 70 people, as you said, on this, and who knows how many got turned away. So I think this is really good community engagement. And I just want to again thank you, the Neighborhood Association, using your last 2 meetings to do this. And also taking the extra time today at this point in time with being on the call and the question. So Dan, I know this has been difficult, and for the other officers too, but great job.
Thank you. I shared the feedback link one last time in the chat. That link goes to a forum that goes directly to Sweet Tea. So if you have any remaining questions or things that happen to bubble up while you're sleeping, that's the time when they always bubble up for me when I'm trying to sleep. Hit that link and you can share any of your comments and concerns there. Obviously, we'll do our best to consolidate the feedback from here tonight. As always, we'll have these recordings on our website for anyone to listen to my nasally voice and all of our important questions and concerns. And then, yeah, I didn't even finish the meeting. So next meeting is November 16th. We're having our elections. We had all the nominations come in tonight. Aaron, JC, Rachel, myself, and Michael all running for positions on the board for next year. To vote for board members, that'll happen in November. You get to be a dues paying member. Technically, we have to make an election committee tonight. So if anybody is in the meeting and would like to, I don't know how it's going to work since it's all online. I guess verify the results of the meeting. If there's a volunteer who can be like, yeah, this meeting was conducted properly. If you could please volunteer somehow, that would be awesome. But I don't think that's a huge sticking point. Anyways.
Dan, do we need 2 people to volunteer to run the election next time? Isn't that what?
I think that's it. But if we're on Zoom, like it's just going to be a poll.
Oh, Ryan's volunteering to be the election committee.
There we go. Ryan, maybe we can chat on how we can.
Uh-oh. Is a threat.
Cool, Ryan, I'll chat on how we might be able to make this work. Obviously, I think it'll just be a poll via Zoom, but we can talk about that. I think that's all for tonight. Again, this will all be uploaded into the interwebs for people to make fun of my nasally voice and to experience all of our thoughts and concerns that we had tonight. That's it. That's all I got. Anyone?
Thank you, Dan.
All right, you're welcome.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks very much.
Not a problem, guys. Takes a
Thank
team.
you.
Thank you, guys.